welcome to the SciFirst MovieTalk episode. So in this episode, I'll be discussing the 1984 space adventure, The Last Starfighter, as directed by Nick Castle. Interestingly, the one and the same Nick Castle who had indeed played Michael Myers in the original 1978 slasher Halloween, and indeed the newest of the franchise's sequels from 2008 through 2022, at least in part. Now, before I get started with this review, I just wanted to give a big shout out to Rob R, who requested this review some time ago. Rob is a YouTuber offering a number of brilliant lifestyle vlogs, demonstrations, and even a number of TV and movie reviews himself. So, if you do have a chance to check out their channel, I will leave a link to a Rob R episode at the end of this review, and also a link to their channel in the video description below. So then, The Last Starfighter is, surprisingly, an 80s science fiction movie I was still yet to check out. How this ever fell off my radar is absolutely unbelievable. But then that's one of the best things about that era for me. No matter how many times, but no matter how many films I think I've actually seen, there's always just one still left in the ether for me to find. And hopefully, still more to come. The movie takes us on a voyage into the stars when Alex Rogan, as played by Lance Guest, manages to beat the Starfighter arcade game at the trailer park where he lives, setting a new record and unknowingly starting a series of events that see him recruited for an elite intergalactic battle force, the Starfighters. Longing for a life outside of the park but feeling like its prisoner, being called upon to keep it running and its residents happy, Alex feels frustrated at the life he's been dealt. Little does he know just how much life is about to change as an adventure unfolds beyond his wildest imagination. Going up against the formidable Zare and the Kodan Armada, together with his co-pilot and navigator Grieg, as played by Dan O'Haley, Alex has to dig deep and come to terms with the fact that he might just be the universe's last true hope, and in doing so, becoming the last Starfighter. So, firstly, I must say I was truly amazed and blown away by the interest shown to Alex as he approached that record on the Starfighter arcade game. Literally, the whole park was there. It was like he'd just scored a home run. The whole atmosphere was electrically intense. At no time in my life as a gamer has this ever happened to me. But then again, nobody ever came knocking on the door to whisk me into space either. Just me mum telling me to stop messing and get to bed. As cheesy as it actually was, setting this kind of moment open, I'm going somewhere with it, it did give the movie a bit of a flair, a warmth to the characters that put everything else that followed into good stead. It's not a harsh movie, almost a kind of soft space adventure by most standards, but certainly a homely one that has a good heart and a piece of American pie thrown in for good measure. It certainly spoke to how fondly Alex was thought of within the community, and probably to the lack of entertainment that the camp actually had. A high score being the pinnacle of the day. His mum's response was ace though, absolutely ace, similar to my own experience. Oh really? That's nice. But either way, the world does feel like your oyster when you finally manage to complete the game you've just invested the best part of your summer in. And the film does an excellent job at kind of recreating this vibe with its characters, especially Alex. But then also kind of the lows when that adrenaline kind of rush wears off. Thinking, is this it? What's next? It's a movie with a true wide-eyed sense of adventure, living somewhere between Star Wars and Star Trek, borrowing heavily from other movies in the genre of the time, yet still accomplishing a real sense of individuality. It's not quite a spoof, but it does rely heavily on quite a comedic approach. Quite dry and sarcastic at times, just my kind of wit, which I think does help to kind of differentiate its more generic plot from others. It's not quite a spoof, like I said, not in the same league, anywhere in the same league as 1987's Spaceballs, by any stretch. You can tell this was meant to be a much lighter take on the genre in general. Light and airy, you know? But in balance to this approach, it does kind of sacrifice on the plot. It's quite generic and kind of pretty lacking of any real substance. Flimsy, I would suggest. Most of the space elements are either far too convoluted or over with before they begin. We are simply kind of thrust into this universe with all its eccentricities, with not much to go on. I wasn't really even sure who we were supposed to be fighting, or what indeed their motives were, other than kind of taking over the quadrant. It's not quite a space opera, although it certainly sees or sets its stall out to be one. It just doesn't have quite that kind of the right ingredients to really make it great. But it still is a brilliantly fun adventure nonetheless. Prime Saturday afternoon watching, you know? A totally harmless, wholesome, venturesome, plucky voyage into the depths of space. Interestingly, the film was one of the earliest productions to extensively use computer-generated graphics, and pretty much all of the sequences set in space have been rendered in this way. The 1982 movie Tron also kind of took this approach. However, the films do have a substantial difference in this respect. Both may look pretty dated now by today's standards, absolutely, but Tron specifically was set within the computer world of the 1980s, and so using CGI of the time was kind of pretty fitting and extraordinarily detailed. Unfortunately, The Last Starfighter may have also been an early trailblazer into the foray of CGI, but in this case, it's just not really to its justice. The use of such CGI here is in sharp contrast to the more warm and often over-the-top practical creature effects, which I absolutely adored. It's a curt difference when the CGI effects are used, which kind of took me right out of the moment, feeling very cold. Certainly not really appearing or feeling like any of it could be real. And you know, and in such a space adventure like this, it's a pretty big lack of appeal when, you know, you can't get into that environment. And to an extent, it kind of detracts the audience from the experience as a whole, in my opinion, on this occasion. Unfortunately, what we get is a series of sequences that wouldn't be out of place as a cutscene on a PS2 game. I would say, however, they were still quite impressively detailed. The world it does create has an expansive feel to it to a degree, but also quite clipped in its depiction. We only see a very, very small part of this world. There's not really enough to kind of whet one's appetite, which is another shame, if I'm honest, given the premise's potential. Overall, this is a movie with a certain warmth to its story and characters that bring a true sense of adventure. Certainly one which speaks to my childhood. I just wished perhaps that I'd watched it when I was younger. That way, it would certainly have held more nostalgic value for me. You can tell it's certainly been heavily influenced by the likes of Tron, Star Wars and Star Trek. Some more obvious than others, but interestingly, it doesn't feel like a direct rip-off of any of them, really, and indeed does have a few unique angles of its own, which keeps the comedy flowing and the adventure kind of moving forwards. The story became a little bit hard to follow at points, I must admit, and in the end, for all of its complexities, actually ended up seemingly fairly minimalistic against what could have been an exciting opportunity to build more of an immersive world, and the special effects are quite a mixed bag. Some are absolutely amazing, others look cheap and cheerful. But I did love its eccentricities, its often sassy and quite sarcastic humour that, whilst it doesn't have the kind of gravity or substance needed to be truly great, it's still more than a fun, wholesome adventure, and quite the worthwhile diversion. And I am definitely glad I did get around to watching it in the end. So, that brings me to the end of this episode. Many thanks for watching. I do hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, please leave a like. Please do hit that subscribe button for my movie reviews. trailer reactions and other movie related content. Absolutely loved having you at SciFirst MovieTalk and definitely love to have you back. Most of all, just thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.